Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show. Welcome back to another Saturday night Sci-Fi Shadow Chat. Tonight, as you can see, I have Bo's Basement with us. Bo will be along shortly. He's just doing, not really sure what. Probably. There he is. There he is. I started the show without you.
How
you doing, man?
I just had to go get some stuff from the kitchen sink to bring back down. I had to wash some stuff and get everything straightened out, and still, kind of rolling over last night's game.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that on your video. That was cool.
Just things that you want to go over. Things that are not common. I guess common to everybody who run a role-playing game in your entire life. Everybody's had to party, split up, or whatever, and try to maintain the flow of the game. And these are things that I've been thinking about lately. So,
yeah. Well, like I said in the comment section of your video, it's gonna happen. And sometimes, believe it or not, I actually embrace it. I like it because if the players do that, it makes it a little more challenging. And we all know, as we've talked about so many times, sometimes later in the game, it becomes a challenge. And one of the things I actually like to do is throw those traps that drops the one or more of the players to another level of the dungeon or something like that, just to see the freaking utter panic in their eyes, because so many people have been raised to never split the party, yet Scooby and the gang did it every single episode, and it always worked out for them, but not everybody has the luxury of having a psychic immortal Great Dane in the party. So there's that. Want to say hi to Raven and Hilt in the chat, as well as Doodle Squatch. Welcome to the show, guys. Hilt, if you guys haven't met them, I just discovered their channel a couple of days ago. I really liked it. It's a really cute channel with some actual stuff under the belt. They've got a game that I'm going to take a look at later this month if everything works out. So go check out From the Hill. Definitely, help them out if you like what you see. Doodle Squatch, been here before. Welcome again to the show. And as you guys know, Raven, she's my partner in the paranormal over on 1-2 Radio, and of course, the Quantum Show with Nathan Allen, which we will all be migrating over to at the end of this show. Bo, I had to pick up a brand new bottle of freaking Testers. I just bought a bottle of this, liquid plastic cement. I literally spilled the entire bottle, brand new friggin' bottle, all over my table. Fortunately, I use foam board as a sort of a table cover for my table, and it's really nice because my little X-Acto knives, I can just drop them blade down and they stick in the table, straight up, so I can get them my files and pokey tools and stuff like that. Just drop them into the table and there they go. I also picked up these cool little gadgets today, believe it or not, at the dollar store. They're I'm guessing they're Gundams. I can't. This is Char Zaku. Check this out.
Cool.
$1.25. I'm gonna pop it open because I've never popped one of these open. I got the only 3 they had, and I gave one to Jackie, but he abruptly went right to sleep. But they light up. So I've got a little mech here, from what I understand, that's gonna light up. Oh, this is actually pretty nice. You can tell right off the bat. So I can just repaint it and turn it into something else, because it's not quite 28 mil scale, depending on exactly how you look at things. But I'm gonna probably just use them as some sort of villainous robots after I repaint them.
Right.
Oh crap! I guess the legs need to be popped in or glued in or something. I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah, I typically the hobby shop near my house, I typically get the Tamiya plastic cement because it comes in the heavy glass jar, and it's got the brush applicator. which is nice. The only problem I have with it is you get about halfway to the bottom of the jar, and then the brush doesn't reach anymore. So I always end up having to get a second. I always end up, pouring 2 jars together when you get about halfway down.
Right. That's exactly the case. I actually have a jar here that's, the brush is just barely touching the bottom of the jar, and that's all that's left after the spill. And I was desperately trying to scoop it up and put it back in. Oh, check this out. He pops open so you can put the light element in there.
Man down. I tried to make the screen bigger so I could actually see you, and I ended up tipping it over. That's cool, man. You have to do a little short video on that, an unboxing video or something.
Yeah, the legs just stick in, which is kind of goofy, but I can just glue them in because I'll probably base them anyways.
Right. I'm a big fan of basing anything that you expect to use as on the tabletop.
Oh shit! Everything just pops off. This is crazy. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to do a little short video on these, but I figured, for $1.25. Here, let me show up close.
Yeah, that's him.
Yep, and I put the legs on backwards, but whatever. For $1.25, I've got a couple new little robots that I can from the way it looks like, the way everything, like the legs pop off, the feet pop off. I could probably do some mixing and matching, and change it up a little, and turn it into a brand new robot or whatever.
Right.
But I've got the light element. Looks like it just uses a couple little, camera batteries, and
okay.
Not bad. Not bad. Little.
As long as you don't glue that shut, you should be good to go.
And then I just finished this. Was it? No, this was. I finished this Thursday night on Table Breakers. It's a Shadows of Brimstone miniature, but it's a giant pterodactyl with a snake man riding on the back.
Can't beat that.
I thought it would go great for your Mesoamerican style game. There's so many great Shadows of Brimstone snake men and Aztec warriors and giant lizards and stuff. Just a crap ton of stuff. If because you probably won't get to run that game for a while. Later on when you're looking for minis for that, just to get you in the mood, kind of thing. Definitely take a look at the Shadows of Brimstone. I'll tell you more about it off camera.
Sure.
But yeah, that's all I've been doing. I did assemble a bunch of minis for Shadows, and I did take. I don't know if you see this guy. It's a Shadow Stalker, so of course I had to assemble it, already based it, and all I did was zenithal it and give it a speed paint of this really dark purple, and then I'll just do a little bit of dry brushing to pull out some of the details. But I did get I got like 20 pieces done so far out of about 250 to go. So I'm going to be good. I did find a place online. I haven't pulled the trigger, but I can get the entire line of Speed Paints 2.0, all 90 bottles, 3 brushes, a palette, and a big old bottle of Speed Paint Medium for $250.
Well, if I didn't already have, I have like literally 6 baskets full of paint. Wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 baskets on my wall full of paint divided by tone. And one of those is just ink, like literal ink.
Like Dr. Martin's?
And then everything else is divided by colors mostly. One has got my oil-based paints in it. One has got bottles of spray paint. And then the other one has got my powdered effects and washes. So, and then I've got another one that's nothing but flesh tones. And I don't mean like human flesh tones. I mean all the flesh tones, all the orc green and, whatever, Knoll brown and all the stuff that I would ever use to paint skin tone on a monster. Yeah. So I'm not buying any more paint until I use up what I've got.
Well, I've been running out of the original speed paints, and I do need to get some washes, but I wanted to get the 2.0s because I really love what I've seen with them, and all of my Army Painter paints. I want to get it to the point where the only Army Painter paints I have are the speed paints, the washes, and a few select colors because I'm kind of up to here with the chalky and pastiness of it. I've literally probably got 500 bottles of paint in the studio right now, and I bring it up to six something, which is somehow appropriate to the number of subs we have, so I can put each one of our name each one of our subs on a bottle of paint. So pick your color, tell me your name, and I'll write it on there. So I'll have Boat Paints Minis, Poisonous Cloud, or something like that.
Right.
Um,
Right.
Logan, I will do that right after the show. I'll send you my email through Discord because I really want to see what you've done with your game. GM Johnny, welcome to the show. Speaking of welcome to the show, let's say we get the old discussion rolling. Now
Absolutely.
we've got all the catching ups done. If you guys have any questions or you want to throw something in, I'll try to keep up with the chat. Normally my son would be here helping me out, or at least giving me a hard time, but he's sick as a dog and literally sleeping right now. So it'll be next week that we'll talk about Stellaris, which I'm kind of curious to see what he wants to tell us about it. I've been watching him play. It looks like fun, but as you guys know, I do not have the time for a video game. I would literally have to give up sleep.
Right.
So I wanted to talk about, as you guys can tell from the title of the show tonight, exploration. Now we can verge off into fantasy worlds because the difference between sci-fi and fantasy is kind of iffy for me at least. They're kind of the same thing because I'm going to have science fiction in my fantasy and I'm going to have some fantasy in my science fiction, peanut butter, chocolate, that whole thing. But I wanted to talk about ways we can help people to quickly, or if you're the kind of person who has to write stuff down before the game, and plan out your worlds, because I do a lot of world hopping in my campaigns, and even in one game night you might hit 2 or 3 different worlds depending on the exact game we're playing, and I really like to be able to just come up with the a new world. Now I'm not talking about the political structure, the economic structure. I'm talking about just the visuals, what the world looks like, because that's really what the players, at first blush, that's all they're going to care about, or that's what's going to hit them first is the sensory, input. What does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? Of course, what does it smell like? And ways we can just, quickly just randomly pull stuff out of our, collective memories of things that we've enjoyed. I really enjoyed the Elder Scrolls. I forget there was one country that was made up of lots of lava flows, but giant mushroom houses, and instead of trees they were all mushrooms. And the way they drew it was really, really evocative. It really let me know I was in a completely new area. It could have been a completely different planet for all that the differences there were. I really felt strange, alien, and of course weird. Any thoughts on the topic right off the bat?
It's really daunting, the thought of creating a world out of whole cloth for any kind of game, and especially in a science fiction game that may have almost disposable planets, right? I mean, you said 2 or 3 planets in a session, and honestly, the thought of that gets my anxiety up a bit. My first thought is, when you think about creating a planet that fast, is what world book, splat book, campaign book do I already have on my shelf that has a world map in it? What can I raid in a hurry to at least lay a skeleton down so that my players can move seamlessly into the game, right? I want things to be just as absolutely smooth as possible, and I don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? I mean, we spend so much money on game books and resources. And the way I think about it is, I'm willing to buy a book. I'm willing to buy a whole game just to mine it for lore, maps, anything like that outside of the rules. I'm really a rules agnostic guy when it comes to a lot of that stuff. So if I've got, even if it's a fantasy game on my shelf that's got a world map, if I can, run it through a photocopier or something, especially if it's something that already doesn't have, hexes and grids on it, so I can add that stuff myself. I just want to get things moving in a hurry. And then later on, when I go back to start fleshing things out, adding in details, adding in all the stuff that I need. There are some books that do have, rules for creating worlds in a hurry. If you've got any of those books, some of the space books do. I haven't read the original Traveler, but I imagine it's got stuff on world creation in it.
You know what? It's literally got, as far as I know, the greatest world generation system of all time. It's got this universal planetary profile, and it starts with, the world size, starport, blah blah blah, all the things from, water, how much water's on the planet, what the population is,
Right.
Government, law levels, all that stuff. But it leaves out, obviously, when you take into account the water and the atmosphere, that kind of can give you, kind of a quick summary of what the world is like.
Right.
Hey, James L., good morning from the Southern Hemisphere. How's it going?
I've got some books that have some stuff on world generation, and regardless of what kind of system you use, again, to keep it as agnostic as possible. I just think that unless you know exactly what you're doing, unless you completely begin with the end in mind, if you're trying to create a world from a movie that you've seen, or from a television series that you like, or if you're trying to recreate Earth, unless you want things to be completely weird, if you think that, okay, this world has got like extremely iron rich atmosphere, so that the sky is red, like, because there's no water on the planet or something. These are things you have to consider, right? You have to answer all these questions, especially if your players are very curious, or if they ask a lot of questions. I do believe that you shouldn't get caught too flat-footed, though. So that's why I said I always want to have as much stuff lifted from other source material as I can.
See, for me, I never know when my players are going to, open up a portal, teleport, randomly smash the jump button on their ship or something like that. Or even if they do, for me, it kind of feels a little railroady if I already have the world, in a sci-fi game, that is. If I already have the world that they're going to go to, unless they tell me, okay, we need to find a planet like this. So we search the library, and okay, now we're going to plot a course to a world that fits our criteria. When it's a completely random situation, because sometimes that can even happen, in a more or less strict sci-fi game without a whole lot of weirdness in there. If I don't use the traveler system, from memory, because when they first get there, I'm going to tell them what it looks like. Okay, now is it blue? Is it green? Is it red? I can figure out the whys for all of those reasons later once they get there, or they can ask me questions, by looking at their scanners and things like that to determine, what's the atmosphere like, and then I can, probably come up with a reason why the sky is green and the water's purple. Okay. Right. But a lot of times, if they like teleport into a world with, just completely randomly for some reason, or they open up a portal to an alien world, by randomly, hitting the chevrons on the Stargate kind of thing. I'll literally start with either the sky or the foliage and try to describe just weird stuff. It's got a pink sky, purple clouds. The trees are, a twisted mass of orange and speckled yellow and blue, leaves, and they twist around low to the ground, and occasionally you'll have, larger trees spike up at angles and things like that, or there's crystals, lining the pathway. How's it going, Max? Don't let real world science get in the way of an interesting world, and don't let autistic players turn the game into an encyclopedia of, well, actually, yeah. I don't have those kind of players for the most part.
Where you stand depends on where you sit. Ideally, you'd have answered a lot of these questions for yourself before the game even started. But I've got a question for you then. You said that if the world was pre-made, it might feel railroady. But if the players push the buttons randomly, who cares if the world is pre-made or not?
Right. No, I don't want them to get the impression, I really want them to, go their own way. And, if it, like we've talked about before, if they tell me they're going into a dungeon and it's the end of the night, and I'll be, like, okay, next session, you're going into the dungeon. I'm going to draw it up, and that's a railroady ride. They're going in there, I'm going to draw it up. I'm going to put the monsters, and the traps and all the bells and whistles. That's the accepted sort of situation. Once they've told you they're going into or to a place, then obviously you have to make up that place. And the more time you have to prepare it, the better it's going to be for everybody. You're not just like scratching your head trying to flip through a book, rolling up charts, because I don't like, pulling out a book during a game is probably never going to happen unless, somebody needs a definition of, a spell or a magic item. I'll tell them, you found a boat of folding, and they're like, what's a boat of folding? And I'll tell them, go look it up in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Now that you know what it is, you don't know what the words are, but you know what it is. So, I'm going to give them some leeway, as in, they've probably heard of a boat of folding before. Somewhere, in their youth, someone told a fairy tale about a boat of folding type of thing. I'm not going to get too, caught up in the weeds over that. But, the more time you have to draw up whatever the next situation is, if it is, going into a dungeon or exploring a set of caves or things like that. Caves, that's a little easier to just completely wing and just, not even need to roll charts, just randomly say, and describe what they see, and, how the cavern opens up, and describe what they see in the cavern, or down the hallway, or what they hear or smell, things like that.
Right.
But if they go into something more structured or man or alien made, obviously it would be better if I had floor plans and things like that somewhere on paper, or, more or less in my head. Because, if the players are worth their salt, they're going to try and, more or less sketch out a map while they're playing, or, try to use one of their devices to record their path. Their tricorder or whatever is going to, map the location out for them, because I don't want to, to bog the game down with things like, you don't remember if you went left or right here, on your way out, kind of thing. Right. Once the dungeon's cleared, they just walk out. If they literally cleared the dungeon of everything, I'm not going to spend another 2 hours walking them to get their way back out. I might roll for some random encounters that they missed. When they went left, the orcs, that were on watch went around the other way, and they never bumped into them. So they might bump into a couple of wandering monsters on the way out. Or if they're in a military complex and they slaughtered everybody, in the camp, there might or might not be a sentry droid they missed or something on the way out. Okay. But for the most part, they finished their objective. Game's running coming to a close because it's, the end of the night. I'll just, okay, you made it out. Day later, you're camping, and we'll pick it up next week there.
Right.
Doodle says you got to limit player possibilities, or you're just making things hard on yourself. To an extent, absolutely. If you can handle it, cool. If it does become a problem, obviously, pull some stuff out of the mix so that it's easier for yourself. And I'm not one for taking copious amounts of notes in a game that I run. That's kind of up to the players for the most part, because things are usually pretty simple, and it's not going to be too hard to remember where we picked up, unless my 70 and 80-year-old players are forgot their meds that day or something like that. For the most part, we're usually pretty on top of it, and the things are so different from game to game that it's kind of hard to forget that they were hanging off a cliff by by their fingernails, and that's where I left it.
No, yeah. When it comes to like sci-fi games with like new worlds, I've tried to put players in situations to really choose where they go, and the way I look at it, that's why I would want to have a few pre-made worlds, so that if they barely touch the world, I could save it for later.
Well, let's talk about those pre-made worlds. If you've got some, because I do have some worlds that the players are really familiar with. It's their go-to location for, let's say the black market, or that's where all their contacts are, or maybe that's the world they started with, and they like to go back there from time to time because they want to visit their families or things like that. What do you do to make up those
look for inspiration in how your galaxy or your game universe is made. I mean, is it something like Star Trek, where it's got infinite diversity and infinite combinations with sentient aliens all over the place, and verdant, peaceful, green worlds everywhere, Earth-like worlds? Is it something more like Judge Dredd or Warhammer 40K or Cyberpunk, that's filled with dystopian postmodern hellscapes? When I think about the games that I play, I want to have a diverse mix. And I want to bring, this is my current game world is, my game galaxy is almost infinitely large. It's a galaxy. I asked every player in the party to pretty much make up their own homeworld. Lay down a skeleton. Didn't have to be fleshed out, but tell me what kind of planet that each player lives on, hails from, so that if I incorporate those planets into a game, a story arc, an adventure later on, then it's something that not only the players took a little bit of part in, but it took a lot of my plate, right? So I think that encouraging the players to take a part in making a world, and in fact, it's the opposite of railroading, right? It's the absolute opposite of railroading. Look, if your player comes from Necromunda, tell me about it. Write it down a little bit. Tell me about what you think, and I could always veto it or override it. But if I like the idea, if your character, drove a garbage truck on Necromunda that took the dead hobos to the Soylent Green factory, awesome. Please tell me more about that. If your character was worked on an agriculture planet that was perpetually green from weather control satellites, and the rain came down perfectly 180 days a year, tell me about that. Let's do it. But the problem is a lot of times finding players that actually want to participate in things like that. But I think it is part of the RPG experience, especially, well, even in a fantasy game. Tell me about the duchy that you're or the shire or the kingdom that your character is from. What do you think about involving the players in those world building experiences?
I've actually been a big fan of that for a very long time. A little less so when dealing with an actual like Dungeons and Dragons kind of world, because then they're going to take like way advantage, of the situation if they're smart and they really put any thought to it. Obviously I'm going to veto. You're not the first in line to the empire. The throne, that kind of nonsense. Although I did have a couple of characters where I started them out literally in high royalty positions because I wanted to tell a story of those kinds of characters to sort of help move about the countries and the wars that were brewing and have people in charge of that stuff. I had a friend, Pat, who literally was born son of the emperor and was going to become emperor when of that nation when his father passed away, which was 20, 30 years or more down the road, but it still gave him a very interesting starting point. And the rest of the players, didn't mind because some of them were from completely different countries. So it was cool. They knew somebody high up, but they themselves came from pretty respectable families and backgrounds and things like that. And I ran that campaign for at least 5 years, before things, people drifted away, moved, got married, had kids, that sort of thing. But, that always happened. My happening is from the past that duchy. Gotcha, James. Doodle, yeah, I read that one. And then from the hill, I sent my core rules your way. Oh, okay, thanks, man. I really like the idea of letting them, especially in a sci-fi game, because there's so much more leeway and so much more room. Okay, you came from this cool ass planet. Well, it's literally 480 light years away. That's a couple hundred jumps away. So it's not even going to be in the sector or even on the map that I'm currently running. Your family traveled, or the military picked you up on your home world when you joined, and for whatever reason you're now a couple of years travel away from home, so it doesn't matter anymore. It could have been Oz.
Not the physical world, but the technological world. I know that both Traveler and GURPS have tech levels for their planets, and if the planet that you come from is a different tech level than the main game setting, then that provides for both interesting role play and different and rules aesthetics. If you come from a planet that's
absolutely
stuck in a 19th century aesthetic, and you've got to go to a Star Trek level aesthetic, and you don't even know how to use the 3 seashells, well, that provides for real interesting role playing experiences, doesn't it?
Absolutely, or vice versa. You came from an incredibly Tech 17 world, and now you're slumming with these Tech 13 guys, and you're always talking about these fantastic gadgets, and why do you even have to bother pushing buttons? Why don't the machines all read your minds and know what you want? And and that would make for some great role playing if to play a character like that. This pompous, arrogant, spoiled on technology type of character, now having to slum it with some mercenaries and some hooligans. That would be fun, at least for me as the GM, and quite possibly the player who decided to play a character like that with that kind of a background. I think it's a great way to really get the players involved in helping the story emerge with a lot more color and a lot more strangeness, especially when you're dealing with sci-fi. So many games, especially Traveler, everybody gets caught up in the weeds of the buy low, sell high kind of mentality, which is like, that's not Traveler to me. That's papers and paychecks. I'll have no part of that. If that's what you want to do, you're not even going to be in the game per se. You're going to be at a computer screen, until you leave for the night, and then I'm going to mug you just to put you into some combat or something as you're, trying to catch your taxi. But before you make it to the taxi, these two guys, come up behind you. One guy grabs you, the other guy punches you in the gut. Where's your wallet, bub? Kind of thing. It's just, that's boring. There's no adventure. There's no exciting. Who would want to go to a theater to see Traveler the movie, watching a bunch of people push buttons, oh wait, or Star Trek, and watch the credits roll into their account. Whoop-de-doo. Who cares? That's boring. That's not action. That's not adventure. That's not intrigue. That's just, I don't know what that is, but I've been in campaigns where that was 45 to 60% of the game, and yeah, I didn't stick around for those kind of games very long. It's about getting caught up in some sort of you know quest or adventure that's going to bring you, maybe you're going to be stuck on the same planet, but you're going to be going from area to area, biome to biome, seedy area to rich area to, backwoods, etc. For me, it's really about the visuals. I really, I go back to this, every once in a while. When I saw Empire Strikes Back as a kid, and I saw Hoth, and I saw Dagobah, and I saw Bespin, and I saw these vast contrasts of worlds, three worlds in one movie that were so
Right.
vastly different, as well as, even, the original Star Wars, you had Tatooine, you had the Death Star, you had Yavin, 4 or whatever it was, all vastly different worlds. As a kid growing up in California, I'd seen the beach, I'd seen the suburbs, I'd seen, downtown LA, Hollywood, those were, pretty different, but not as drastically different as going from Hoth to Dagobah to Bespin. Those were, really starkly contrasting worlds with, their own innate dangers and mystery and things to watch out for. Hoth had, bitter cold and, wampas or whatever the heck those things were, as well as the tauntauns and, that, but just the idea of, just stark glacial expanses everywhere with, one little place that's safe for the rebels and everything else is just bleak misery, icy cold death, to going to Dagobah, which was, a swampy, just nightmarish, we never got to see the bugs, but they were there. There were
Right.
probably, hundreds, if
Oh,
not
sure.
thousands of different species of bugs just waiting to eat you.
Right.
The thing that tried to swallow R2 in the swamp, you fall into that. Oh my gosh, what do? Right?
Right. Right. No, I do want to create that sense of wonder for the players, and it really depends on the level of reality that you want to create. I mean, are you creating a universe where maybe one world in a million literally is inhabitable? Yeah. Do you have a technology that has something like? Is it like Firefly, where where they have terraforming? Um, and as you answer these questions for your game, I think that allows it to get pulled in different directions. Imagine, if you will, a gas giant like Jupiter, completely unhospitable, but the gases, the hydrogen compounds are used to power your fusion reactors. So you've got these mining on these completely inhospitable planets, and think about the possibilities for role playing that. You know, whereas in Star Trek, every single planet looked like the hills outside of Los Angeles, right?
Can't imagine why, other than those orange skies, which I actually get here in Palmdale. Yeah, that's for me. I like to kind of take a little bit from our own solar system. We're all mixed up the number of habitable worlds, but we've got some really interesting worlds here. In our solar system, we got Mercury that is probably mostly just freaking lava. A mini sun with islands of not quite molten landscapes. We've got Venus, which is, who knows, gaseous, from looking at it, but who knows what's in on the actual planet itself. That's why Carson of Venus was one of my favorites of Burroughs' works, because what he created on that world was really, really weird, especially for 1918 or something like that. Just coming up with that stuff when we barely could fly. I think in 1918, something like that. Kitty Hawk was like 1916 or 19. I don't remember, but you get my point. I like to, look at our own solar system with, the kind of planets that we know are going to exist out there, all the way, from Mercury all the way to Pluto, where, Pluto and Neptune are incredibly cold, barren, moon-like places with, maybe some frozen water, but mostly just, cold balls of rock with jagged mountains and that sort of thing. What's happening, Omen? Right. And using those kinds of examples, obviously the gas giants and things like that. Every system, for the most part in my universe is going to have, maybe 2d6 worth of stellar objects, and each one I'll either roll or decide what it's like, and we can take from our own solar system. The closer it is to the sun, the hotter it's going to be. The hotter it is, the less likely you're going to get life as we know it, but that doesn't mean there could be, silicon or crystalline, life forms or energy creatures. 1918, thank you, Loman. Things of that nature, all the way to, the Goldilocks zone. That's where it gets fun. There could be life there. What's it going to be? Is it a planet full of intelligent dinosaurs? Maybe. Why the heck not? We know that here on Earth, we had dinosaurs. Were they intelligent? Maybe. Maybe all their tools and technology, disintegrated, rotted away. It was all made out of leaves. So, it just rotted away. We'll never know what they used. Maybe it was all crystal technology like Land of the Lost. Who didn't love that show? The Sleestack, Enoch, and the crystal portal thing. Oh man, I freaking as a kid just absolutely loved that whole idea of moving the crystals around to make the portals open. Oh man, how many times I ripped off from that show, and players didn't even know that that's what they were encountering. The crystals on the walls that if you put two together, they're gonna explode.
Right.
People really, if they get the opportunity, ought to go check that show out. If you can make it into the latter part of the show, I'm going to let you in just a minute, Omen. There was some really genius guys helping to write that show, and there's so much you can steal from it. Going to bring Omen in here. Okay, I thought I pushed the right button. I guess not. What's happening, Omen? What's your take on new, strange and new worlds and keeping them weird? I said that way just to tempt Brian to come onto the show, and of course he's going to be like a ghost tonight. We can't hear you.
Well, that's because I had turned off the microphone. But no, there's a. If you ever, like I used to do stuff with, what was it, Bryce 3D or something like that when I was, about 20 plus years ago. And what they would do was you could change on the limitations of what colors you had, and it completely changed what everything looks like. So just to say you go from a red world, a sun with a white or yellow light like what you have, to one that's more of a bluish, it can change everything on how you view the aspect, the colors, the fauna, the flora. There's that. Have you ever heard about when they were talking about Triton and creme brulee?
Creme brulee.
So
no. Hold on a sec. Sandwich. I'm not sure who you are. Can you post me a thing before I let you pop in? And go ahead, Omen. Sorry, I just want to keep.
So NASA, when they shot, when they're doing Saturn with the rings, is they sent off a probe into, Triton? Anyway, and it landed, and they said that it had the same effect as if it hit creme brulee to the surface. And so they were joking about it. Just the fact that it's very cold, you start getting methane water rather than methane gas. You start getting some weird aspects from there. Of course, I know we've talked about flora and fauna the entire time. But I think colors are one of the big ones. The other part is I don't know if you've heard about lights being caused by earthquakes. So apparently, whenever there's a contraction or something in the earth, they'll actually report that lights are forming. So if you're in a tectonic world, you might be having ambient lights around, even though it's dark, just from that aspect. You know, a lot of weird things that go on, and there's nothing wrong with that. And then if you want to go really crazy, you can always go the Rick and Morty, you know, a planet full of corn and stuff like this, where everything looks like corn cobs.
I've done Stranger Things.
I understand what you're talking about.
Mac and From the Hilt. Yeah, you know, there are a lot of crazy cartoons out there and other shows that you can really steal from. I'm gonna add Sandwich Man to the show.
Okay.
Hello there. I'm going door to door to make you this incredible offer.
Welcome to the show, man.
You have now lost that offer because you waited too long. Goodbye.
Nice.
Okay.
That guy is gonna die alone and cold in the dark with no one to mourn for him but his waifu pillow.
Hey, stop describing my life.
Wow. I have no idea who that was, folks.
Well, you know what? He didn't bring any sandwiches for the rest of us, so he's not allowed to stay. It's just like when you were a kid. Did you bring enough for everyone? My response is, well, they can make their own. Were they here to make it? If not, did they spend their money? No. No.
So we've talked a little bit about you know, some of the TV shows that might give us inspiration. How about novels or authors or things like that? Are there any things you guys go to that have inspired you in creating strange new worlds?
Well, to me, the more that I read Dying Earth, the more, you know, just the phrases that he does. There's that one. I'll be honest, one of the books that I usually pick are nonfiction. Is I like to go back and look at the stuff in the Cambrian.
That's incredibly unexpected.
Well, I mean, you know, you go back, like about a book on dinosaurs and pterosaurs, just because they're so cool. I mean, you can't get any better monsters than that. Yes. So, yeah. You know what, James L? It's just like those sandwiches where people keep putting a name on there. I don't know why they do it, you know, but I do appreciate them leaving the sandwiches for me to eat. No, it's but those are the things
just
that I like
out
to
for
go.
the mayo. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, I don't like mayonnaise, but no, if you start going back to Cambrian, go look at some of the flora and fauna out there. People forget, you know, the grasses are a relatively new plant life.
Flowering plants, especially, are really new.
Well, and that came around the time of the dinosaurs, but like grasses didn't come about until the like 30 or 40 million years ago, and it's. But there's some cool stuff like that, you know. And then the other part is, if you want to do it, is you get like insect-like beings and how they start building things, and they may ignore the players. They're just going along with their life, just and maybe the players even kill them and they don't even notice. They just treat them like, yeah, it's just like a fungus. We just keep on moving and move along.
Right. They may not even register that you're there because of their limited or specialized senses, and because, you know, for millennia their species never came across anything other than the other things that are already on the planet, so they may think they're actually hallucinating or not feeling well because they're seeing these strange things, you know, in their path, and, you know, maybe move around.
It's just like, oh, Bob just died for no reason. All right, let's just keep going. You know? Have you ever seen like the you know, I know we talked about this before with the flora and fauna, you know, especially with but just the way, not looking at it as a combative aspect, but just as a terrain aspect. And this is where I think Avatar does a pretty good job for some of their, you know, the visuals with the trees and stuff. I'm like, yeah, you do that. Mine at all, you know, especially around the ground.
What happened to Bo?
I don't know. Highline I like. A lot of these others, though, are more fantasy, and that's why I tend not to use them as much. But what is it? The Permian, not the Permian, the Ordovician, and a few others where they have what they think are giant fungi that have these big trunks around. Just stuff that's really cool. That's one of the things that I think off-puts is players are somewhat familiar, but that it's different. But yeah, exactly. Thousands of books. Slime mold. Have you ever seen how slime molds?
Slime molds?
Yeah, they've tested it out, and it can do it's almost like it's the thinking entity as it goes out, and they'll find the fastest way to move through things, and they're like, oh look, it copied they did one very similar to Tokyo, and that's what they want to. I mean, if you're, how do you want to put this? If you're a species that's used to growing up somewhere that has all trees and water, and you come to a desert, that would just be as weird as can be. Like, where are all the plants? What's going on? And have you ever seen what do they call it? Eluhu Rock or whatever it was? The one in it's in Australia, the very famous one, Ayers Rock.
No, I'm sure James L could tell us about it as well.
Well, they aren't sure what color it is because it depends on when you look at it, depending on where the sun is in the sky.
Oh, okay.
So it changes color. I'm sure you've seen this with your mountains. When you look at the mountains and sometimes they're purple.
Absolutely. Here in the high desert, things can be very different.
And and what do you do when it starts, having a skewed where, it kind of orbits around a different way?
Mac asked the big red one in Civ 5. And James L says you can make the dimensions erratic time, erratic gravity. I was just getting to that. The normal laws of physics, you can, warp. How many times have we seen, fantasy or what have you, where there's an image of a landscape and then there's this floating island, for whatever reason. It might not be magic. There could be some literal reason, like, magnetism, linky, no worky. Okay, I'm pretty sure this is another troll, but let's just see what happens.
I'm going door to door to make you this incredible offer.
What's the offer?
You have now lost the offer because you waited too long. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
God.
Speaking of strange beings.
Right.
Speaking of which is.
You know what, Bo? Let me send you back the link, because whoever that individual is, apparently has been with the show for quite some time. To be able to get the link from all the way back almost an hour ago.
Well, I was able to get it. Yeah, that wasn't too far back to get it.
What a dork. You know what? I'm laughing. I've never come across anything or anybody like that. The voice is somewhat entertaining. Let's just put it that way. If it's a fake voice or something like that, if he walks around all day with that voice, I would definitely have developed a sense of humor as well. So thumbs up for that. That did Ouru. I don't know what that means. Mac, Bo, I hope you got the link. You're always welcome to come back in. James L, you want to pop in? It would be a pleasure to get to talk to you again as well. I like messing with the laws of physics and just, like one thing is different. I used to have, I might still have it in my notes, ways to make worlds weird. Just a list of different charts, and one of them would be, laws of physics and different ways they could change, gravity and things like that, to just throw something completely strange into the mix. I also have worlds where literally like psionics, magic, or I'll call them superpowers because I use a lot of superpowers even in my sci-fi games, just because they're a good way to like take like you take like an ability like let's say adaptation or wall crawling or something like that and give it to a race of creatures. That's just a natural ability that their species has, and it doesn't have to be comical or anything like that or comic-y. It's just that's the way it is. They can do that one thing. That's just a racial ability that creature or species has. But also have ways I'll mess with the laws of physics. Maybe there's one thing that you just want to change for this particular story or adventure.
Or the other one is, and this is taking some inspiration from Ravenloft.
What's happening, Dave? I knew it was you. I knew it was you and not the other guy.
Yeah. I'm just this is proof of life that I am not the sandwich man. This pumpkin right here, it's authentic.
That's a pumpkin?
It's a gourd.
That's a pumpkin, yeah.
Well, I know pumpkins are gourds, and that's a type of gourd, definitely.
Okay.
But
I'm just used to, roundish, but you're in Australia, so maybe the laws of physics are different there.
Oh,
hey, Omanal, I got a game I think you would like.
Oh, which is cool.
Yeah, pretty cheap
but I wouldn't like that at all. Yeah, I was going to say that's not up my alley at all.
You don't like being in the jungle, though, do you? I thought you were anti-jungle.
You're kind of right, but
it's called Florida.
I have done my share of it. That's why I'm not a big fan.
Well, as an electronic electronic musician or a part-time electronic musician, I would say that I personally think that jungle is massive, but
the Red Rock NAU, okay.
Well, no, that's what they're talking about with the one I was talking about with Ayers Rock.
Yeah, we don't really call it Ayers Rock anymore. We call it Uluru now because of politically correct reasons. I think we use the Aboriginal name for it now. But when I was growing up, it was always Ayers Rock. So I feel like Myanmar, Burma, kind of same deal.
Rhodesia, Zimbabwe,
Yeah.
Or like the British like to say, the colonies, of which I didn't say. I didn't grow up in the colonies because most places I lived weren't part of the British when we broke off.
Yeah.
So, no, it's but no, but those are some things. The other part is and we're going to mention this because they really did it in Ravenloft, where the player's actions alter your environment in a way that you do dark things, it starts reacting such ways. If you do good things, it starts reacting the other way. I forgot which one it was. It was one of the 40K ones where they talked about it was always like a real peaceful place, and then over time, as people got there, it became more and more aggressive. But visually, Avatar's a great place to start. That's a good one.
Well, you raise an interesting point with 40K because it's kind of like the warp or the world outside the world is influenced by what you're doing in an ordinary physical world. I mean, to the point where I was listening to some lore the other night because I can't believe I have a girlfriend, guys. Seriously, I don't know how to I was going to sleep listening to some lore about the Tau. I was like, I'm gonna learn about the Tau tonight. So apparently the generalized belief that all the supporting Tau species in their kind of philosophy of the greater good has created another chaos god. And the Tau are basically keeping it under wraps, or they're like, maybe we can exploit it, maybe we can make use of it. It's kind of goes against their principles, but they're not really that stuck to their principles. So yeah, I mean, it's the whole thing of like what you do in the real world influences the warp, and then the warp comes back to bite you. You know, it doesn't even have to be. It can kind of be behind that extra wall of like reality and kind of leak in, right?
I'm gonna bring this up is if you really want to, which I think does some good visuals. Go. I've been listening to bits and pieces of Paradise Lost. Go read the very beginning where he's talking about sitting on the shores of the Lake of Fire and things like that for hell, and it like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. There's so much out there. Now Star Wars does it visually, but there's a lot of comics out there that have done it. I think that those are always good. But I'll tell you this much is one of the best inspirations is go drive around the United States. Go spend a couple of weeks. Go to Yellowstone. Go to Utah. See the differences in colors and visuals and times of day. That will inspire you because it feels like a whole different world when you start driving.
Well, the U.S. is just very terrain central. You know what I mean? Like, people often criticize Americans for not being more interested in like world travel, and I'm like, but you could spend your life traveling the US and still find new places that are completely different landscape. You know what I mean? Like, it's big enough and varied enough that you don't have to go anywhere.
Oh yeah,
you know?
Yeah. Oh no, I agree. Well, I think that people just need to we look at all the stuff through our screens, but boy, you go out these areas and like, oh, this part of the country is different than I expected. Oh, this is high plains, and you see, what they call big sky country from Montana. You're like, wow. And then you go over for in the mountains. I've been to Europe, and that's fine, but people just forget.
People are so surprised when they learn we have Alps and like snow in Australia. Like they're like, really? I'm like, yeah. Well, in some parts of the country, sure. Like.
Well, I just know the parts of it, that it's like, oh, okay, this has the giant crocodiles and swamp. That's
sure.
That's the part is
I mean, where I live it's like pretty humid but temperate most of the year. Like, it's we got a cold snap at the moment, but like I could be anywhere. You know what I mean? Basically.
Well, I'm looking at you, and it doesn't look that much different from where I live, except that you have green behind you. Mine's all now because we're in a drought. But the other part is anyone remember the Star Frontiers? What is it? Alcatraz, the planet Alcatraz, which went through, it slowly turned, and when it was in the dark, it was completely frozen.
Prison planets are great. That's where you put your really bad, like top level boss guys. Like you got a problem on your hands if they get out of the prison planet, or you crash on the prison planet.
Oh yeah. Well, those are. I think that some of it is just the wonder, and I think that a lot of times. And I know Shadow talks about going outside and seeing the beautiful sunset. I know how that is here. The other part is just changing up the stars. It doesn't seem like that much, but boy, when you start putting in 3 moons, I mean, what was that one shot with Luke Skywalker with the 3 moons? That was actually pretty cool. That was what, it's an iconic imagery there. And how does it affect the world? And then that's when you start putting in, oh, this moon affects it this way, and this one affects this way. And then when they start, what happens when you get conjunctions and
we've got the ghost of Garibay in the stream chat. I'm telling my niece's children that was Garibay, the sandwich man.
Oh.
Yeah, I think he wants to come back in, but under the guise of evil judge. I'm having a little conversation with him in the private chat. He wants to give us a speech. Evil judge, if you can just hold on a bit, and we'll try and squeeze you in toward the latter half of the show.
250 words or less.
Hey! If the Gettysburg Address is what 239.
I know it's rich coming from me.
This is about recent news. Can you give me a synopsis in the private chat, and Give me a fair warning, mull it over a bit. It wouldn't be a Strange New Worlds kind of episode if I didn't bring up my old friend Roger Zelazny into the conversation. He had an absolute masterful, poetic way with words. In a paragraph or less, he could describe a whole brand new world, and you knew everything you would ever want to know about it in just a few well-placed words. So many just wonderful, really quick descriptions, because in the Amber novels, as well as some of his other novels, it was very much about very quickly going from, literally like with one step, you're in another world. The next step, you're in another world. Next step, you're in another world. And he would give you the impression, that you would get as if you were that character, literally doing that shadow walk or hell ride from, a different dimension, a different aspect of reality, quicker and quicker and quicker, as you were nearing your destination. If you guys haven't read any Zelazny out there in the chat, which I'm sure most of you have, please go out and grab the 9 Princes in Amber, and get back to me. If you don't like the book, I'll buy it back from you, because I literally could never have too many copies of that book.
I haven't actually read it. I'm complete. I bought like digital copies, but like many great digital books, they were kind of incomplete. So,
well, you know what? I've got 2 credits for Audible that I need to use. So I need, but no, going back, that's one of the fun things, is going back and rereading these things and realizing just what a grasp of language many of these people have. That's the other part. We all talk about, oh, it looks like this. Change up your vocabulary. Go look stuff up and change up your vocabulary, and that will have a greater impact in certain ways. Even if your players aren't quite in, you're like, let me go. That's what happened with D&D. Is I had to go look up a lot of words, and that made a big difference. So
I wasn't much of
the first one, Shadow, or is it?
I wasn't much of a reader of fiction until my school teacher started getting books out of the library for me that were sci-fi and fantasy and stuff like that, and then I really got into it.
Well, as a kid, I used to read stuff about Atlantis and Mu and all of those things, so that's why I was.
I don't know if I can help you out with that there, Justin. Shipping to Canadistan is brutal.
It's just easier to catapult stuff over the border.
It's easier for Shadow to just take a week off, drive up there with his son to go look at the Canadian landscape, and then to drive back than it is to pay.
I bought two historical hex encounter games from a shop in Canada, and after about 3 months, I chased it up, and the guy in the shop was like, "Well, I don't know, it's just how it is. But I'll be keeping your money." I'm like, "Okay, thanks."
well, no. I think this is funny. Is I decided to go into. I bought some Monty Cook stuff, and it says printed in Canada. But to get it back, to give a free giveaway to someone in Canada, is more than the book cost for them to print it there and ship it to the United States.
Absolutely.
I just think it's lovely that. I just think, on the topic of Canada, it's lovely that finally Sophie Trudeau and Idris Elba can be together.
I wanted to get back on this. You guys were talking a moment ago about learning new words, adding new words to your vocabulary. I've been doing that lately. When I watch a video, occasionally someone will say something, and I'll hear a word that obviously I know it, but I'm like, man, I haven't heard that word in a good long time. So I've been making up a list of words that I'm going to try to incorporate into my day-to-day vocabulary, at least with Jack, so that he learns some words, and not all just 4-letter words.
So I mean, when I'm writing technically or to convey information, they say keep it simple, stupid. But when you're writing or listening for enjoyment, I want to luxuriate in those long words that summarize like a whole paragraph in
Jack
2
Vance,
words.
man, you will be Calgon, Calgon heaven if that's your desire. There are some
Which one is this?
Jack Vance.
Oh no, I was going through it. I was like, let me make sure that I have that. And Jack Vance is a great one for doing this. And you feel like, well, I was listening to him, John Carter, the Edgar Rice Burroughs, the even though they went, oh, they're just pulp in certain cases, their language, their grasp of language was far superior to what I see nowadays for most people coming in there. Like I can go through.
Am I the only one who thought Jack Vance was literally making up words as he went along?
Well, to be fair, I didn't read Jack Vance until like within the last year. So I've
Same here, man. Isn't that weird? I mean, I had my Dungeon Master's guide since I was 14 years old. He was like a damn near top of the list in the appendix, of books to read. And I'm like, The Dying Earth. I picked up the book 20, 30 years ago, and it's, the paperback was in my library. And I'm like, I read the paperback, and I absolutely freaking loved it. And then I went and I couldn't find the other books, for under, an arm or a leg or a kidney. So I went on YouTube and I found a couple of audio narrations of the next couple of books. And I forget who it was. I wish I saved them. They were so much fun to listen to because of the narrator. Just made me absolutely fall in love with his work. And I am so bummed that I didn't find it, literally, 30, 40 years ago. I would have, I would have been able to reread them and re-enjoy them. I don't know if you guys are like me, but like you'll read a book and then, 10 years later, you want to reread it again. And you like, it's like reading it almost again for the first time because you yourself have changed to the point where you now perceive the book differently.
I do that sometimes, but the thing that bothers me more than anything is how much I pick up on that I didn't get the first time. Like when I watch a movie for the second time, like I think, oh, I saw this when I was a kid, and then I watch it and I'm like, well, I don't remember this at all.
Well, but I think that's what makes good movies. The problem that I have with a lot of modern movies is they don't have those multi-level aspects which you catch up on things. The old Disney films used to be really good, that they would have stuff that was only adults would pick up and stuff that kids would pick up, but the kids wouldn't pick up some of it to keep them interesting. The old, we're talking, what is it, like 20 years, over 30 years ago, but no, Dying Earth is excellent for reading. But the thicker one, that's what, 800 pages or something. I've been reading what's his name, Moorcock.
Couldn't agree more, Mac. Couldn't agree more. I know folks that are not big fans of cursing and things like that, but occasionally nothing punctuates a sentence better than the right, swear word. Let's just say.
The problem I have is most people don't use it judiciously. They just use it over and over and over again, and it has no impact.
Swear words are like turtlenecks. They lose impact if you wear them out.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You just put you just come in one day, you wear a turtleneck, and everyone's like, or you come in. It's like the guy who wears a suit like once every 99 months or something. What's going on? What's wrong?
Is today your court date?
Yeah, exactly.
I have to say that the last suit that I bought for a job interview was a bit on the cheap side, and I definitely looked like I was just going to see someone about a traffic offense.
Yeah. Well, those are just things that but I think that's part of it. Is just go out there. Find those weird words, have a thesaurus next to you, whenever you're going to describe something, and try to find stuff that's evocative that's in there.
Well, that's it. I mean, I think this is something that I've kind of noticed a little bit is that, like particularly in gaming, because there is a lot of deconstruction of tropes and a lot of discussion and theorizing, and then maybe like many more hours of that than actually being at the gaming table. Like it's easy to become a bit anti-intellectual and to kind of just want to like simplify everything down to its, really bare bones to kind of get back to the purity of the first thing that got you into gaming. But like, that doesn't mean you should be afraid of like new concepts or, I mean, I watched this, like, there's a little bit of a debate in wargaming now, which I thought we were safe from it, but apparently not, where like I'm noticing sentiments around historical wargaming being kind of politically incorrect, or like, maybe being an overall negative thing as opposed to like fantasy or sci-fi wargaming. And I'm like, we should really like look after this art form, because like, there are just as many people whose opinions I agree with who kind of like rag on it because they're like, oh, I don't want to count buttons, or I don't want to paint the facings wrong, like, or like, if I could watch a 2-hour like Tower Law video, you could watch a documentary about Napoleon on YouTube that goes for 15 minutes.
But see, I think that there's a lot of people out there. What I find interesting was, if you look at some of the popular YouTubers, which they try pushing down, like the Metatron, Todd's Cutlery, the what's the timeline? There's a lot of stuff out there. The problem I'm finding out is that people are afraid.
Metatron is an interesting one. I mean, he did. I think it was either him or someone related to him that like really tackled the tropes of homosexuality in the ancient world. And like, if you believe one reading of like history, it's like the entire Bronze Age through to the like Iron Age and Dark Ages was just one big gay resort. And like, if you actually go back to original sources, it's like a lot more complicated than that. And there are certain times and places where being a member of that community was not a good place to be.
I'm going to bring this up, which is, I don't like her politics, but she's a very intelligent woman, and she understands the background, was Camilla Paglia. Whenever I listen to her, I feel like I'm coming back. I feel like, I heard her talking about whether
she's pretty intense. She is a very intense kind of thinker. Like, she's a little bit chaotic. She's a little bit chaotic, but she does have some interesting insights.
She's an art history professor, super feminist kind of thing, but even she's railing against this stuff. And it's very interesting. So,
it's funny you guys mentioned Metatron. He just started coming up in my feed. I've never heard of him until literally yesterday. And I'm like, maybe I'll take a listen.
So Metatron, Scholar Gladiatoria.
Take care, Travis. Great having you here.
What's it? Lindsay Beige.
Lindy Beige is great fun, but I refuse to believe he exists. He's like 27 marmosets in a coat.
Well, who's the other? Who's the guy that owns? Is it Rebellion? He's the one that owns the rights to Judge Dredd.
Right.
And
does he like, wasn't there a whole thing where he was like he paid for something and he's like, this means I have the rights to the whole franchise, and then everybody was like, I don't know if it works like that.
No. I think he does have the rights to. He was trying to make stuff, and COVID hit. But what's interesting is that he owns like 40 acres, and he likes doing the medieval stuff. So he does the medieval history, and I thought it was very interesting talking about the foods. There's another thing we haven't gotten into, which we want to talk about in Strange World: different habits and customs for food.
Sure.
We all look into things, and I go. We look at certain things, and I look at.
Right. I remember that one Star Trek episode. I think it was Enterprise, where they got in a bunch of trouble because Porthos had peed on a tree, and it was a sacred tree. But at the same time, they were all upset because the humans and the rest of the crew, ate in public, and for them, it was like a big deal to eat in private. That was such like an intimate thing for them. And I'm like, that does kind of make a lot of sense. I could see how a society could grow up like that, especially when, there might be poor people who didn't get to eat, or where, each person had to go hunt and gather their own food, and they never developed an idea of eating together and sharing. I could see that being, a legitimate thing that was really
Well,
quite interesting.
the New Kingdom Egyptians, like they had similar rituals around eating and also like washing and ablutions and stuff like that. Anything personal, they had a dedicated room for it. But anything that they considered like kind of okay, they do outside in the open. Like,
Well, the other part is, if you start looking at it, is we're so used to it, but they didn't have forks, back in the Middle Ages.
that's a
Forks were,
Byzantine invention, baby. Yeah.
but no, I mean, when
Right.
you look at everything that they had, it was, well, what did they do? Instead of having bowls most of the time, they would have bread bowls, and then after they were done eating,
Yeah, the
that
trencher.
food would be taken and
Welcome to
given.
the show, TCG. How's it going, buddy?
So those are things that I'm thinking about as just little rituals. I know that Shadow watched ran and watch. I mean, that's about as alien as you can get in certain cases when you start looking at all the rituals that come into it. And
Did you guys do Ran for like Connell's movie show or
Yeah.
like?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Have you done the broadcast on that yet, or like is that?
Yeah, we
coming
did
up?
that a couple weeks ago.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch that because I love that movie. I love that movie.
But I know Shadow didn't, but it was just watching, the ritualistic. That to me helps when you go through, because a lot of times we seem to move away from culture. We just think, it's the Wild West, which is great. That's part of the reason that we all like to play, sci-fi, is we kind of like this, there's no rules out there, even though in the reality is, if you start looking at the culture back then, it was actually a lot more, I want to say, ritualized than it is nowadays in many cases.
In a lot of ways, it really was. There were, there were a lot of customs and habits that we've lost, and it was pretty darn formal. I mean, just the tipping of the hat. We all take it for granted. Like for me, I don't wear a hat inside, unless I'm doing the show and it's more for an effect. But like I go places. Like when I go to my son's award shows at school, I take my freaking hat off as soon as I walk in the door, and then I look around and count the hats, and I'm like,
well, even in
right.
even in the Americas, like in the Wild West and the 19th century, generally there was like still like an overriding kind of gentlemanly Victorian, maybe even kind of Protestant way of like dealing with each other, right? Like a kind of, I mean, you see that right up until World War One with the Christmas truce, when the Germans and the Brits were playing soccer in the trench, and sharing their cigarettes and booze and their cake and whatever. To me, it's like almost kind of like that moment is kind of like a death of that honor code that existed in Western culture.
I'm going to bring it a bit different though, which is interesting, because we all look into this and there's a lot of separation, but having been overseas, you'll find a lot of that aspect after, because you went through the same thing, and there's no one else has gone through that battle. Like it's really weird talking to like Vietnam vets, and you look at them and they have that similar. They become like friends, even though they were trying to kill each other 30 years before. And it's but I was thinking like the rituals, like if you ever watch whenever they take pictures, they're all very formal. They're all very well dressed. Because that was a portrait thing. There was none of this, hey, we'll just take a selfie. Silliness. Like, no, it costs too much. It's one of those things that when you start looking at.
Well, Mac, I would say that I agree with you on certainly some of it, especially around like politeness and the public-private distinction, like in terms of people having a sense of a private life and an entitlement to privacy, whereas now people are like really into like broadcasting a lot of personal information. And I think that some tradition is like, you don't really know what it's for until you lose the tradition, and then you're like, oh, actually that really checked that human tendency or whatever, like.
Right, like my first time in Mexico, I was reading up on going to Mexico because I was going by myself, and not just to the border, but like deep, in the middle of Mexico, all by myself, not speaking a word of Spanish, a little. But, one of the first things I kept coming across is, you always have to have a hat. you know, and it was for, you know, waving down and getting people's attention, as well as, you know, protection from the sun and things like that. And, you know, I grew up for the most part, like almost never wearing a hat. It was
Sure.
just not a thing. And as I get older, I'm like, you know, these things are pretty cool. You know, and
Well,
my boy,
I live in a
he's
country
got
with
like 20 of them.
ridiculous. I live in a country with ridiculous UV exposure. Like that's why all Australians look like slightly weathered people from other countries. Like, you know, like we all have a kind of a squint from like, you know, decades in the sun, and yet hats, like, despite a push for them in school, like it just nobody wears them. I'm like, maybe we should really look at that, you know? Like,
Well, like for myself is, you know, well, the boonie hats, I know you guys have those and things like that.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
some out there,
yeah.
but it seems to be more the military style for some of it. But the other part that comes into it is, you know, I like to wear a hat when I'm out in the sun as well, just because it gets off a lot of the, you know, sunburn is not that much fun when it starts peeling the top of your head. But
Right.
But the other one that comes into it is whether it's beards or things like this. When I was in Afghanistan, if I was clean shaven, they wouldn't listen to me. As soon as I got a big bushy beard, all of a sudden they stopped arguing with me. Like, and then of course military is like, you have to have this, and that's another thing that's changed. Go look at the, you know, we're talking about styles, and I think that's another thing just to separate is the different styles. We all, anyone who's watched Babylon 5 with Londo Malari and that hair, you know.
Or Giorgio Lucas from Ancient Aliens. Welcome back, Evil Judge. You never gave me that synopsis. Still waiting, buddy. You know, that's an actual thing. You know, with Giorgio's hair, that's an actual style. It's not like he doesn't care. He's not, you know, pulling a Reverend Jim from Taxi. That's an actual style. I don't get it, but you know, we used to have, you know, folks with mohawks, and they weren't a member of a particular tribe, but you know, it was a style, and those little things can be like a warning or an identifier. They can tell you so much about a person. If you walk into Walmart and you see a guy with a purple mohawk spiked out, that tells you a freaking couple of paragraphs about, you know, that particular person. That you know, maybe there's stereotypes or assumptions, but you can get a lot from those little things. And maybe with these alien worlds, maybe they've got similar weird customs and you know, manners of dress or things that they do, or the ways, you know, way they groom themselves or don't groom themselves, you know, can be another little flavor you can add to the stew to get people to go, oh, this place is different because of, you know. And
Well,
then
we
you got
know
all
that
these other things that,
we know that Vulcans didn't eat meat, and Romulans preferred, you know, spicy food that kind of inflamed the passions, kind of thing.
Well, the other thing is, like, just talking about the hairs. Let's not forget about the Maori tattoos and stuff. You're like, oh, okay. And that's the other part too. Is, you know, just, and you can do this with alien species and things like that. Is, you know, everyone looks at like, oh, they tagged it. Well, you know, the symbols. Perfect examples. If you look at the Aztec symbols on the buildings and everything, or anyone that's looked at some of the symbology on in our own buildings, and you can start seeing stuff that you never realized what's out there. You know, the whole thing of, we have Washington, D.C., you know, being built a certain way. This is where I've been reading into the, you know, the skinks of Warhammer Fantasy, where they're starting to talk about, well, they're just trying to alter the pathways of the water. Actually, John Carter does a really good way with, you know, we're talking about the early 1900s before anyone went up there, is when they used to talk about the canals of Mars, and that they swear that it would bloom, you know, during different times of the year. It's like, oh, okay. I think that all those things help, you know, whether it's the hollow earth aspect to it. It's like, well, what's going on? Where did we go? Why is the sun always on?
I don't know if you guys mentioned earlier either, like things like megaflora,
Yep.
you know, like giant Little Shop of Horrors style Venus flytraps, or even just spores.
I absolutely love that Little Shop of Horrors. Real quick, Mac, you also need to know K. And if you say it the right way, that can end a lot of conversations for you. You know, especially if you know some of the curse and swear words in Spanish, and you hear them, you know, pointed in your direction, and you just look at them and go, K. and they'll be like, oh, shit, and back the hell down. The other one is Quanto Cuesta, which I think is how much, and that one can go pretty far as well.
I'm going to bring up one other thing, though. You know, if we talk about Spanish, my friend keeps on getting chewed out by his wife for speaking Spanish, and not Mexican Spanish.
Yeah, I have a friend who's Uruguayan, and I was doing Spanish at uni for a little bit, and we were watching some Spanish program, like trying to pick up on the whole thing, and he was like, "I don't even know why you're watching this." He's like, "Mexicans speak it so slow." Like,
We'll guide you just a minute there, Mac. I want to ask James L. real quick because Justin's being really nice today. Also, the best TV show from Australia ever created was H2O. Just add water. 5e, bro.
I'm not going to dispute Justin's claim because I don't know it. So like it could very well be the duck's nuts.
I thought it was Farscape and Xena. No,
Farscape is pretty good. I rewatched it, like because I caught it when I was a kid, and I was like, "This is silly. What is this?" And then I watched it like the first episode a little while back. I was like, "This is great. What happened to this show?"
I enjoyed the first season. Once they started in the mental stuff, it wasn't quite for me. But no.
I never caught it. I never caught it at all.
On
I saw
Amazon
little
Prime.
bits and pieces. Sorry, folks. I'm gonna go back upstairs. What was that?
It's on Amazon Prime.
Is it?
Yeah, I struggle to watch the one movie we watch a week together. I still haven't watched Bill and Ted's because I was hoping to watch it with Jackie and his friends.
Did you enjoy Ran, like as my little preview for Connell's video?
He did not enjoy.
Not particularly. No, not really.
Was that because of the Eastern philosophy underpinning it? Like it's all the woman's fault?
No. No. It was just it was a little confusing and it was a little boring. I mean, the fighting and the combat, there should have been a little bit more like one-on-one combat scenes. The sweeping, battle scenes were gorgeous. I loved all that. And the costumes, I've never seen more comfortable pajamas in my lifetime. But the overall story was just a little hard for me to understand how you could let that happen, or not know your own children.
It's just a massive like revenge and like rivalry and kind of a bit different to our understanding, because it's like if a lord has three sons, like one will go off to the Crusades and one will be a priest and another will look after the land, whereas over there it's like, no, it's got to be the last man standing.
well, I'm gonna bring this up though, a little bit different, which is, to be fair, is I've watched Ram probably 5 or 6 times, so at this point, I know what I'm watching. Whereas if it's your first time, you might be like, "What the hell am I in for? What are they doing?" But
have any of you guys heard of a recent pancake panic? Evil Judge has asked us in the private chat about
pancake panic.
No.
Anybody
The pancake panic.
I haven't even heard of a flapjack fricas. So
I mean, I'll tell you this much: is gingerbread pancakes the best, unless you include some pumpkin spice in there, and then they're even better.
You pumpkin spice. You are a 37-year-old white woman who works in finance. Your name is Belinda.
Hey! I'll tell you this much: is if I could find a woman that could actually cook something, that was one of the first things I taught my son to do, was cook. But no, it was.
I don't get me started on like the life skills of millennial women, because my reputation will drop rapidly.
Well. So you have a girlfriend? I don't. I'm allowed to say these things.
Let's just say, ignorance is not a virtue.
Look! 165-degree chicken is
definitely not a virtue. Justin has asked kindly to join the show. I'm gonna bring him in if he'd like. I'm sure got the link. Let's Uh, uh, he wanted to talk some B5, I think it was.
Well, I mean, I love Babylon 5. I just wish that they had more stuff on different worlds, though I did love what was that?
Right.
You know, Star Trek, the problem that I have with Star Trek, and of course it got better over time, but it was limited. I kind of enjoyed, speaking of whole new worlds, go look at Alien and look at how that was just, with the, that gives you claustrophobic even though it's open, but it's in crags. And then Dune's another great one. If you want to talk about a whole different world, and whether you go pick the original movie or you go by the book or you go by the newer movie, I think they're just fantastic overall.
With Dune, I almost kind of wanted to spend more time on the Atreides planet, like the water planet, and kind of find out more about how that all worked.
Oh, I know. I
maybe
Caladan.
Yeah, I'd love to know more. I'd love to know more about how that's kind of like situated and like what life on that planet works and stuff like that.
Well, look at the Harkonnens, which is a whole different one in there.
One little thing I wanted to talk about before we go. Also, wait, what? Farscape Shadow? Watch it. Screw Bill and Ted. Farscape, bro. Must watch TV. I will try to get to it and see if I can find it somewhere else where I could watch it more at my leisure and not be like forced to rush through it. For having paid for it, because I'm sure I'm going to have to pay for it.
No. Farscape is free on Amazon Prime. I think it's just part of the.
Really?
Yeah, it was part of the Prime package.
Because I've got sucked into that a couple of times where I've paid or rented for something, and then oh crap, I got to hurry up and watch it. I did that, I think, with Red Dwarf, even though I've seen it all many times. It's one of my favorites.
I think I could probably rewatch Red Dwarf again, like quite happily. Like,
you need to invest into piracy credits.
Speaking of, but I think that there's, you talk about different worlds. I'm just trying to think of other movies that are out there. I mean, we always have Enemy Mine. I know that they're taken from real places, but you always, change them up.
They forced them to put in the mining scene because they thought the audience would be too stupid to understand the title.
Yep.
I never caught much of Babylon 5, but I did see the other day someone's fleet collection for like the battle game. And I was like, This is impressive. Like, he had a lot of stuff. I mean, some of it was printed, I think, but
I saved a couple of ships. I used to have them all. I have one ship, I kid you not, it's like 8 inches long and it's got to weigh like 3 pounds. It's just this massive, it looks like a giant
hunk of computer.
Right, but it looks mostly like it's all solar panels or something, and it actually rotates. It's really quite interesting.
I've got some nice metal ships, but I don't know what to do with them. I need to be spoon-fed like a plastic starter set with a leaflet.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm just like, they're just going to get painted.
It doesn't require a master's degree in mathematics.
The B5 game came out at the tail end of like using metal models, and I think the fact that they didn't do plastic is what killed it.
Right.
Well, plastic is so expensive to do initially. Once it's up and running, you're okay. But everything I hear is do the molds is like $100,000.
They can be.
So
it's quite expensive. I literally have a collection of starship miniatures that stretches all the way back to the early mid 70s from places like minifigs, etc. I've probably got close to 500 to possibly more completely individual starship models, miniatures.
Mine are mostly brigade models, and they have a slightly World War II kind of vibe to them. Like, there are ones that have kind of got a British fighter bomber look, and others that look kind of German, and like some I got some like they had an Oceania, like, which was meant to be Australia kind of faction, so I got some of their like little skimmers. But I have no idea what to do with it.
It makes sense. That's the name of the continent you live on.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what's we've been talking about the different worlds. The other part is just the different, we talk about architecture, but just the different vehicles and what's out there.
That
just
was
like
me to get a little more into the architecture. Not just because I like to throw alien ancient ruins as a big part of a lot of my games, exploring the ancient ruins. I love that idea, mostly because I'm a big fan of archaeology here on Earth. But imagine coming across ancient ruins, like on Mars, the face on Mars before NASA blew it up. Can you imagine
Yes.
looking at that? You know what I mean? Looking at that, being able to just walk on it and just go, oh my goodness.
Shadow. What's more plausible? It was a shadow, or they sent a team up there with a bomb.
No, they didn't send a team up there. It was one of the rovers that literally
Pretty sure
blew up at the same time.
It's still there, isn't it?
They blew it up with something less than the size of a single stick of TNT.
I'm pretty sure the face is still. I'm pretty sure the face is still there, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is.
No one's photographed it from the same angle
Oh,
again.
so
right.
Well, I want to talk about some fun stuff.
So they knocked.
Exactly, that kind of that whole notion. I have this theory that a really advanced civilization would be able to go to a new world and use the indigenous rocks and crystals and advanced sciences that we do not understand.
Elves are not real. They're a byproduct of synapse explosions during your mushroom pie.
No, Justin,
stuff
that's normal.
I'm being kind, okay? I know it's a much harder drug.
So the whole thing with I got distracted when you brought up
Christopher Dunn's theories and things like that. If he's right, and those things are possible, that you could make machines that do things, but using kind of strangely common ingredients, so that you wouldn't have to lug around these heavy things. Maybe there would be a way to, use like the stereotypical sort of Atlantean kind of technologies that we've all heard and read about. Maybe there was something to that, so that these ancient civilizations, maybe that's how they got around. Maybe it was a long-term process.
Well, they did.
To a new world. Now gotta build a recharging station, but it's going to take you a couple of thousand years to recharge your ship. Well, there could be alien civilizations in my galaxy like that maybe it didn't go so well for them. They got to a new world and died off before they could get the indigenous workers, to build them a new pyramid, stuff like that. Just to
on Mars itself, they have radioisotopes that don't occur naturally on Earth, and that would only occur after a nuclear explosion. They did detect those.
We know of.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff that's, just a little bit different is if you have more moons, how does that affect your tides? How does it affect the other part is when we talk about lunacy, how does it affect your sleep schedule? How does it affect your ability to navigate sometimes? You're like, well, this is over here. There's a lot of little things out there. When all three moons are together, you get massive tidal waves, or you get this. How does that affect it? There's a lot of cool stuff you can do. And that's one of the things that's one of the reasons I like sci-fi from that aspect is unlike, and I guess you could do it with D&D with gates, but gates are always high level, was the ability to go from world to world that you're familiar with, but everyone knows. And I understand that that's what they did with Forgotten Realms, which is, it's got like gates downstairs where you can all go through ever, but maybe I think I saw it all there from the hilt, but I missed like the last couple of seasons because I moved and just never got cable.
Farscape. I thought Farscape was just too off the wall and abstract for my taste.
Which is exactly why I liked it.
Yeah.
What are some ways or inspirations you come up with, guys, for describing ancient, architecture besides the obvious H.P. Lovecraftian, cyclopean sort of description, is there any like style or theme that you like to use when you do that?
Yeah, cathedrals. If you've ever been to a cathedral and look at the intricacy of like Gothic cathedrals and look at how small you are, I mean, look at most modern buildings. They don't have the same height for the buildings and looking out. Though if the postmodernist buildings,
I personally think that's one of the major reasons why Christianity is falling in the world these days, is because their religious institutes don't provide grandeur for belief anymore. You walk into the building and it's a ultra modernistic drywall farce instead of
Good point.
I went to school. I went to school in a Vatican II church, and it was very modern, kind of red brick building, and it didn't inspire much. But then I went to school at a cathedral school, and that was kind of a different experience.
I'm just as much as I went to Russia in the early '90s, and you got to see the stuff. And one is, they did way too much gold plating for everything. I mean, I've never seen somebody gold plated castle.
That I'll agree with, though.
You walk in, it's like, this is way too gaudy. Then they had a room that was blue. It's like, oh my god, it's a blue room. But for me, how do I want to put this? I want the characters to feel small, as if there's something bigger. There's something to be said if you walk into a cave. I don't care what it is, and the cave is 100 feet tall. It goes down, and you can look out and you see the expanse. Or when you go through a small opening, and all of a sudden it opens up, and you see a lake down below, and then you see phosphorescence all around, and you see things coming down. You want to talk about inspiration?
Les Bald again.
Well, no. It was.
Well, I think about buildings that aren't necessarily built so much as like grown or like stung into shape somehow. I think about environments where like you're kind of on a knife's edge as to whether you might actually be inside a giant whale or equivalent.
Planet. Go
back
get.
up. The whole
Lex.
giant sea turtle. Where you're. Oh, that's a good one too. Where your entire civilization is on the back of a some sort of giant turtle or something like that. I've used that numerous times, or even in space. Tin Man and Farscape and things like that I'm aware of, where the ship is a living creature.
Omicron.
It's a bit disappointing when you look at the alien control panel and it's all levers and switches and not just like a big bunch of gel that they can kind of put their hands in.
Well, Lex, it was just like he told the ship what to do, right? Lex, go over there.
The original Star-Lord comic was that the ship was alive and Star-Lord and the ship had a kind of quasi-intimate relationship, where they worked together. It was the 70s. It was weird, but I love the hell out of it, and to watch what's happened or been done in the MCU just depresses me.
It should be a little bit psychedelic and like twisted. Otherwise, why not just stay in like 13th century Europe?
We should really get to the topic I came on here to talk about. H2O. Just
okay. Can you give us a quick, elevator pitch on the show?
It's a show for teen girls.
Well, that explains why you like it.
Yes.
And why on earth do you think this community
it's about three young girls in their mid to late teens,
Justin,
becoming mermaids.
I promise to send you Babysitters Club. I promise to send you Babysitters Club novels when you're in jail. Okay, that's my promise to you.
and their friend who just wants to go fishing, even though like he's probably gonna hook up with at least two of these girls at any given moment.
You make me look.
It's a show for teenage girls, and like Canadian men in their 30s with autism. Right.
I've only ever seen clips of it on YouTube. Okay, so
I could have gone my whole life and never known what it was, and I would have been okay.
same here, but still,
I
it's
honestly
funny.
feel a little dumber for bringing you on the show tonight. Thank you. You're welcome anytime, by the way.
Yeah, I'm gonna
I've
go eat some.
achieved my
I'm gonna
goal.
go eat some shopping bags now because I need to bring my IQ back up.
Wait a minute. Hold it.
You guys take this to the end, my friend. We got 10 more.
You make me laugh so hard. I coughed.
We got 10 more minutes, James. You got to stay with us. Yeah.
I'm gonna go. All right, but after that, I'm gonna
Just
go to
for
the
you.
barber shop. Yeah, that's it. That's what I need.
Yeah.
Get in my belly.
Those are
Get in
edibles.
my
I knew you were
belly.
doing that. I swear to God, I knew you were going to get your Tide Pods.
He
what was that,
knows.
James?
He knows that as a millennial, I'm addicted to eating those things.
Hey,
He knows that I can't stop.
wait a minute. You guys grew up from, when I was a kid, it was all about eating the glue, and now they've moved on to Tide Pods. So.
That's
Yeah.
amateur
Yeah.
hour.
Yes, but glue, you can make glue that's not harmful to your digestive system. You can't
Fabric
make
softener.
Tide Pods that are.
Fabric softener is cannot harm you if you're in The Hague on trial for a Serbian war crime.
Okay, I got a whole brand new, can opener. So.
That's another thing. Like I've seen people of my generation struggle with can openers. I'm like, get me off this planet. Get me off this planet.
Well, you know what?
Hey, James, when they come and pick you up, you know where I'm at. Just make it stop. Me and Jackie will hop on. Maybe make another stop in the Chicago sort of
Like,
area,
it's not
Illinois area, and
Not being
we're
able to use a
taking
can
away, buddy.
opener. Not being able to use a can opener is not like not knowing the DOS commands from like 1991. Like it's essential.
We all need to
for
just go.
survival.
For the Mega Millions, whoever wins that, we can all fly around and see each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I don't know the DOS commands, but that's because I haven't used a DOS computer since
hand
1991.
in your TISM badge. Like we want it back.
I don't have one to hand in.
Hey, I was programming in hexadecimal and realized why I will never be a programmer.
What is this programming you speak of?
You know what?
It is the act of placing your head against the wall in rapid succession.
Well, you know what?
That I've done. That I have done.
I made a character generator in Quick Basic once. That was quite fun.
Yeah, I mean, those are easy. As long as it's just like do that. It's as long as you know what you're supposed to put in. It's whenever you. Yeah.
So serious question. Who's
John
your
Wayne
preferred?
style, Mac? Absolutely. I got one on every keychain.
Who's your preferred Malari, Londo or Calrissian?
Oh, Malari, without a doubt.
Malari.
Well, you know why I
hell
like
yeah.
Malari is because they gave him a full arc for everything that he did. I mean, yeah, if he had just been one episode, I would not.
Lady, oh my goodness!
Which
oh
one?
my God, she was the bald woman. She
Yes.
was.
Well, they were all bald.
Well, the one that died. That
Oh,
was
yeah,
so
yeah,
sad. I was so happy for that old fart. Mind you, I wasn't such an old fart back in the day, but that was just such a, it was nice to see him, not always such a rat bastard, to see, past the, the facade, the personal armor that he always had to have up. It was nice to see the soft, squishy side of that character, because they all have
come on. I loved it when he had to pick one of his 3 wives. That was my favorite episode when he says,
that was a good one too.
Marriage, what does marriage have to do with love? And he points over and he points to his 3 wives. He says, right there, this is what keeps me away from home. But see, what they did is they gave him great lines. So don't get me wrong, Lando Calrissian is the coolest Lando, but
Well,
So
I
we got a
I
3 to
brought
4
him up
against
tonight.
you.
No,
Malari?
I didn't say it was coolest. I said who was my favorite. That's different than who's the coolest.
Lando Calrissian is the coolest. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not even a Star Wars guy, but he's pretty slick.
Absolutely, he was a very cool
slick.
character.
I don't know.
I just don't like what they did with him after, you know.
They made him like they made him like robosexual in the new one, didn't they? Like,
I was really talking about more like in Return of the Jedi. He just lost like so much of his cool when he lost the station. You know what I mean? He was in his element, and now he was just like another.
I never liked the station. The station always seemed too.
See, there's a
Sterile.
perfect one that we're talking about for the world is to have the gas, of the gas giant with your floating, station.
Your mine, your gas mine.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Mac also agrees with Lando Malari.
Well, that's what that station did, right? It pulled hydrogen out and
or whatever they're pulling from.
What is it? You moon-faced assassin
of joy. Yeah.
I'm telling
it
you,
sounds like
James,
something. It sounds like something my girlfriend would say to me.
Oh, well,
James,
I love that.
If you could, one of these days make it past season 1 of Babylon 5 because it was awful. I mean, it had its moments.
I didn't think it was. I didn't think it was terrible. Like I remember some of the like ship combats and stuff being pretty cool. Like get behind the barrels and play a bit of laser tag. Like, but I was very little when it was on TV, so like that's all I remember.
There comes a point in it where any good show will have a point where you literally will be staying up late to watch the next episode. Back when we were younger, we had to wait a week, sometimes, until next season to see. You were just like, it will just suck you in. The story
You underestimate Catholic guilt, my friend. Like, I don't binge watch anything, like, because I just feel bad about myself if I do.
I don't know. When I get into that Babylon 5 groove, I have to download it because it's faster than going over to the DVD rack.
Yar.
Well, you know what? Well, I have to find the.
I have it all in multiple formats.
Well, see,
Justin of the High Seas.
Yeah, Tesla's family.
I recently picked up the 4-box movie set on eBay for like $7. And I know.
I remember getting each season of that show cost me $70.
I know. I literally had to bribe or do something weird to go into like a Sam's Club to be able to buy it because it was the only place I could buy season like 3 and 4 or something like that. I went into Sam's, like, look, I don't have a membership, help me out, help a brother out, and the girl, I forget what she did. She's like, yeah, no problem, I'll hook you up, and I paid out a pretty penny for each season of it, and it's really one of the
it's a tragedy it's a tragedy that it didn't come out 10 years later when they did have the ability for DVDs and things so people could catch up in the seasons, because I noticed that episodes like series like Lost, series like Lost and stuff, because my friend, and you could tell season 4 was supposed to be 2 seasons, they just couldn't do it.
The studio messed with them.
Well, it's not the studio. It's just the way that things came out at that time. Nowadays, it would have done very, very well.
No, seriously. Babylon 5, the studio literally messed with them.
Yeah.
Studios mess with everything. Here's my point is...
Especially if it's good. If it's good, oh my God, they will go after it like crazy.
Yeah.
Look at
Well, for a long time, like sci-fi TV was like the poor relation in like action and adventure and drama and that sort of thing, right? Like,
yeah, you're absolutely right. I remember there was like literally like the equivalent of a drought or a famine of sci-fi. That there was nothing worth watching other than
whereas
reruns.
Now I think we have almost the opposite problem where like nerds are so hungry for content that like franchises really spin out their material a bit too much, and all the questions about the world and the setting are answered, and there's no mysteries, there's no unopened threads.
It's
like everything has to be
used for propaganda. propaganda.
I'm going to say this: it's not that it's the writers are crap. That's the reality of it, and we are starved for it, and we still go, yeah. If it could have been better, I'm like, yeah, but there used to be a time that people wanted to tell stories and just do it as a fantasy setting. Nowadays, there's this, and again, I don't want to get too political. This whole ESG stuff that doesn't make sense. You know, the Rings of Power. Why do you have to make established characters? You have something that you could have done, and it could have been diverse and everything else with the Haradrim and Gondor. You could have picked a time frame there. You could have Sauron in the background. There was a whole bunch of stuff they could have done. You could have done your multi-ethnic aspects. They would have been true to the book. It would have been true to its.
But it isn't about being true to the story. It's about destroying your culture and civilization.
It's not even.
Well, if you wanted to do a fully like adherent version, like Tolkien's elves weren't really that different from humans in terms of their physiology. Like it was more like their mentality and their culture and their kind of access to magic that made them different.
And they didn't have souls per se. Only humans could get off.
Like I think the pointy-eared thing. I think the pointy-eared thing kind of came later. I mean, I'm not against that. I wear those ears everywhere I go. So you know, like.
But I mean, whenever you're.
I told the girlfriend I was dating, the girl I was dating before, I'm with the one now, that if she got her ears surgically altered to be pointy, I would stay with her.
Mm-hmm.
We were breaking up, right? So I was just fucking with her at that point.
Well, here's the thing that I look at, which is, and you're seeing this now with all of the, whether it's Disney or anything else. You know what? We have 50 plus years of sci-fi. Actually, going back to the 1950s, we have 75 years of sci-fi to go back on. And if you're gonna, I saw it somewhere where they said only 3 of the top 100 movies have come out in the last 20 years. Only 3. I mean, that's one of those things that you're like, wow. That's the problem that you're having is, and a lot of people want to be writers but have no real world experience. I've heard.
Well, it's not.
They're in their no. I've heard the best writers are in their 50s, which means you have to do something there. And that's why. And I know Shadow and I will disagree, but I've read some of The Witcher and I've read some of the Michael Moorcock, Elric series. They're not the same character.
The whole
similar themes.
Like, the whole thing with like the modern, the whole thing with the modern woke writers team is that I don't think things are necessarily improved by having fans make them. But if the writing team has an actual antipathy towards the material and they dislike it, and they just want to use it as a vehicle for like other things, like
propaganda,
it's like people who use the hobby as a vehicle for like their trauma and like show up with no sandwiches, for example. But like
show up with this. This is something I'm missing.
But like I think it's like when they actively dislike the material, like it's hard to give it a good treatment. You don't have to be a fan. You just have to be like a decent writer who doesn't hate what you're working on. Like,
Well, I mean, not necessarily like everything that Oliver Stone has done, but he did the Conan movie, which I enjoyed listening to a lot of the stuff in the background because there's a lot of more depth. But the problem that I'm having with it is they want to tell their story.
I like his documentaries.
Well, like there's one with Batman where they're talking specifically about. Sorry, we've completely derailed, but they were talking about Batman and I'm going to do a high school love triangle with Batman, but I'm going to make him Asian, and Selina's going to be there, and she's having a love triangle with the Joker.
The thing that surprises me with all those,
you should be fired
with all of those inserts. The thing that surprises me is you go back and you watch older programs and you're like, there's no shortage of strong female characters or relevant black characters with like agency, like this imagined past of like retrograde attitudes doesn't really exist. Well, you go back and you're like, this has always been a progressive, relatively progressive genre. There's no real need to force this change when it's already like there are plenty of. I mean, look at Uhura, for example. It's like, come on, dude. Like, You know, like
you had Sigourney Weaver. You've had tons of female.
How many strong female characters were in Doctor Who? How many strong female characters were in like Seven? How many strong characters were in Space 1999?
Well,
All kinds of. I can't even come up with, I mean,
it's not even the case of race swapping characters, because for freak's sakes, Will Smith built his entire career on playing white characters. His entire freaking career. Seriously, go look at his catalog between 1985 or whatever he started acting.
Well, I don't
about
even
2005.
I don't even like the classification like white or black, because it's so non-specific and corporate. I mean, when you call someone,
you know what I mean.
When you call someone,
no,
like,
no, I don't know what you mean. To be honest,
when you call someone a color, like designation, you're basically saying, I don't know anything about where you're from or your background or
it's
your
short
you know
form
what I mean?
for African or European. Like
no, but
I'm
you could
sorry,
just say that.
Will Smith was a middle class kid from Philadelphia, and his music.
But that's the one thing that he wasn't, and wasn't race swapped in. But you look at Men in Black or Wild Wild West, or
do you know why they picked him? Because he has a personality that.
Yes, but that's besides the point. And now let me finish my statement, though. Back then, nobody cared because there wasn't a big culture of death to whitey in everything, right? Academia, politics, the entertainment system. You didn't have actors coming out and saying it, and then they were doing the same thing in Hollywood today. The only reason why people care about it is because it's done maliciously.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I it's not that I don't like certain things. Sidney Poitier was one of my favorite actors, and I enjoyed James Earl Jones. There's a lot of actors in there, but here's the thing, they really did. I mean, if you look at in Conan, James Earl Jones, that's technically that would be a Middle Eastern, a white character, and you're going, yeah, but all I want someone is to look exotic. That's all I care about.
John Amos and Beastmaster. That character was badass. He was a good guy. He was a good guy. I mean, I don't know if he was like a spirit, some sort of, priest or something like that.
Yeah.
But he was a really strong ass character, physically and morally, and nobody had, there was no issue with the movie whatsoever.
Lando
Calrissian, which was science fiction. Like science fiction has never been an especially like bigoted, conservative, like ultra conservative. Exactly. I mean, like kind of genre. Like
until now. Now it is.
Well,
yeah,
that's how
like, in a weird way it is, because it's like all about the didactic approach of like you have to have X number of these people in it, and it's kind of like a weird way of looking at things to me. But
that's one thing that's going on. But now you look at it, and guess what? If I watch Chinese films or I watch these others, they don't care. And to be honest, those are your biggest markets nowadays. Where are your biggest markets? India and China.
Well,
I mean,
that's the first problem with making entertainment. You shouldn't be looking at the size of your market. You should just be making entertainment.
I agree with that. I agree.
Yeah.
Well,
if you've got a good story, it'll sell anywhere. I mean, once upon a time, these great stories sold worldwide based on the content of the story. It wasn't about any boxes being checked, and then it became all about that. And you start getting certain actors airbrushed out of posters because of reasons. It's really gone to
personally, I would have liked that character airbrushed out of the movie, but
I wish the whole movie had been airbrushed, and that would have resolved a lot. But
the only one.
Well, I felt like as a non Star Wars kind of guy, like seeing the new one, I was like, this is just a remake of the original ones. Like
everybody said that.
Setting and like, like this feels like the set, like they're just redoing it. Like
I didn't mind the Daisy Ridley's character, like in fundamentals. It's just there was
she's too old for you now.
No.
She doesn't have a tail. That's his problem.
No. She doesn't have pointed ears. That's the problem.
Are you
No, no.
sure? Are you sure? Maybe
Oh
they
yeah, cat girl. She just has.
Actually, well, you know, in the youth, let's be honest, is that the favorite pointed ear was still what was her name from Star Trek 2?
From Cheers. No, I was never.
Kirstie Alley?
Never.
Kirstie Alley was before Cheers.
It doesn't matter.
I still liked her better as what was her name?
Savik.
Yeah, the original, which I thought was so funny.
Yeah, I had the horn. I had the horn for Savik. I had a bloody trombone for her.
I'm more of a T'Pol fan myself. But...
T'Pol is amazing. T'Pol is like a connoisseur's choice, but again, probably too old for you.
No. She's the right age.
Well, here's the thing
unfortunately, Dustin, she plays for the other team, so
no. She's married and has 2 kids in real life.
Justin identifies as a woman on Thursdays. It's fine.
On days
we've gone a little past the 2-hour mark. I gotta cut it because I gotta.
T'Pol is actually bigoted for not wanting to date Justin.
Yeah, exactly.
So there.
Yeah, you know what? Mac agrees with us, Justin. I want to thank you guys for making this a great evening. You guys were all really fun to hang out with, as always. Everybody in the chat. I don't know what happened to Bo. He said he was having some issues. I sent him some messages on Discord.
He's trying to keep the sandwich guy out of his house.
What's the sandwich?
I don't know what happened to him and Evil Judge. I'm still waiting to hear
Jack's
about
alter ego. Cracky.
He sent me some stuff about the pancake panic. I'm going to look it up when I'm done. I haven't noticed or heard anything about a shortage of pancakes. But everybody who showed up tonight, from the Hilt and GM Cody, your first time here, I hope you guys enjoyed what you saw. One of these nights we're going to have you guys on, just for so we get to know you guys better and to talk more sci-fi stuff. I don't know what the topic for next week will be.
We never even got to the Babylon 5 animated series that's coming out.
It's already out.
And I never got to brag about my autograph.
It's only one movie.
I never got to brag about my autographed copy of the pilot episode I have on DVD, autographed by J. Michael Straczynski.
You gotta show that off sometime.
One of these nights, maybe even next week, we'll just do a whole Bab 5 night. Because I've been thinking about that. Not just Babylon 5, but pick a movie and just go gonzo on it. I'm trying to get the little guy to watch Logan's Run. If you guys bump into him,
how can you not watch? Like, it's essential. It's like bloody required watching. Like that THX 1138. Get onto it.
Has he done?
You can quote me. That's a quote, baby.
I don't need to. I agree.
Yep.
Logan's Run is like top 10 or something. Has the young guy watched B5?
No. We made it through like half of the pilot of Star Trek. He was digging it, and then stuff happens. It's so hard for us to just be able to, spend 2 hours or so just watching something. It's with his schedule and after school, he gets home. It's sometimes 5 o'clock, bedtime at 9:30. So there's just like, the last thing he wants to do is watch it a big screen because he's got a little screen he's got to focus on, or he's got homework or other stuff. So hopefully before summer's over, because he goes back to school on the 14th, I'll be able to sucker him into watching a little Babylon 5, Logan's Run. James, will you type out the George Lucas movie, the THX? I always forget the other numbers.
Yeah, 1138. I'll send you a link with like a little note like, Jack, if you don't watch this, like, we're frenemies for like a week. Like, come on, dude, get onto it.
Yeah, that'll motivate him. And guys, if you're of a like mind, send some positivity out to the little guy. He is in bed with a fever. passed out right after dinner, not feeling good. He would have been here and would have loved the show.
Does he have the coof?
We don't think so, but
Yeah.
his mom.
I didn't think I had it when I got it. I thought it was just
all he's got is a fever.
first.
That's it. The only symptom he has is a fever and
Yeah.
headache. That doesn't sound like it to me. Without
that's
the
what I
coffee,
had, and then I don't know.
I got a 1-day cold from my like 2-year-old niece, and I'm like, oh god, like even your diseases are better when you're young. Like, you know, it's like, it was like nothing. I was like, this is fine. I can deal with this. Just take some vitamin C. Problem solved.
All right, guys.
Okay.
I really
Party
got
on, guys.
to hit the head. Thanks for showing up, everybody. Omen, you still there?
I'm still here. I was trying
Okay,
to find the presidential insult where he calls it like soft like a woman, but with none of the masculine virtues of a man. I can't remember. I was trying to look that up.
Oh, okay.
What
Well,
the
thanks
hell?
again, guys, for hanging out. Justin, hit me up on a Discord. I wanted to talk to you about a little bit about something. Omen, I will see you tomorrow. Wish me luck on getting to watch Bill and Ted's. I really had a lot of fun. Again, everybody, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Bye.
And we will talk to you guys real soon. Bye, guys. Owen, happy trails.
Oh, I found the insult. A hideous hermaphroditical character which has neither the force and firmness of a man, not the gentleness and sensibility of a woman. And that was 1800. So this whole thing of, oh, I can't believe that the presidential people attack each other. Yeah, grow up. It's been going on for years. We just don't shoot each other. Oh, have you stopped it?
Nope, I just want to let you get your quote in there. Say goodnight, man.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.